Good morning to you. My name's Emma, and my husband Johnny and I have been part of the Abbey family for just over 7.5 years now. I'd like to start by saying a particular thank you to my visitors, many of whom have stepped out of their comfort zones to bring their warm, encouraging smiles here to support and embolden me as I talk this morning. It means more to me than I can put into words. You know that. 2 weeks ago, Derek, one of our key leaders here at Abbey, set the scene for this teaching series on finding rest for the soul and talked to us about Jesus' words in Matthew 11, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Last week, Steve, another of our key leaders, spoke about the nature of shame and helpful ways in which to overcome it. I was particularly struck by what he said about the Kintsugi Wellbeing course that he runs here, when he highlighted that the week on shame is the one that causes the most emotion. And so we come to this morning and the third week in our series. Back towards the end of July, when Steve sent me my verses for today and the main point to cover, which is to watch our thinking, he was so spot on when he added this comment at the bottom of the email: "I know this is a favourite of yours." Today's is a subject that I'm so passionate about: finding rest for the mind. Our mind is often something that can play such tricks on us. Before I go any further, let me pose a question for you to answer in the quiet of your own mind. In a world with so few guarantees, what do you think of when you think of peace of mind? Before reading our verses in Philippians 4, I think that it's really important that I give some context, as I don't want to assume that everybody here knows that these are from a letter, who the person is who wrote it, who he wrote it for, and where he was when he wrote it. The person writing today's letter started out as somebody called Saul. He was a devout Jew, a rising leader among the Pharisees, and he despised the followers of Jesus. In Acts 7, we read that while Stephen, one such follower, was being stoned to death for his faith, Saul stood by, holding the clothes of those throwing the stones, probably so that they wouldn't get bloodied. In Acts 9, breathing murderous threats against more of the disciples, Saul asked the high priest to write him letters to take to the synagogues in Damascus so that they would grass up the names of those who were followers of the way, so that he could take them as prisoners to Jerusalem. The irony is that as he was taking those said letters on the road to Damascus in order to root out believers for persecution, a light from heaven surrounded him, and he heard the voice of God say to him, "Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me?" From that moment on, Saul was forever changed. From that point forward, Saul knew what it was to be seen by God, and he knew what it was to be forgiven by God. And those things changed his whole life. Saul, who became Paul, inspired by God, went on to write many other letters that today's to the Philippians sits amongst. Letters to the Galatians, Corinthians, Ephesians, Romans, Colossians, Thessalonians, Timothy, Titus, Philemon. Almost half of our New Testament is written by this man who shows us in such a powerful way how God can forgive, how he can transform, how he can use us, frail, weak, sinful people, for his kingdom purposes. And now for the specific context that today's letter to the Philippians is written from. A context that I find mind-blowing when you set it next to the content of today's 2 verses. The purpose of Paul's letter was primarily to say thanks for the money sent by the believers in Philippi, a city in northeast Greece, located about 10 miles inland from the modern port city of Kavala. But it was also to encourage them that they should let nothing stamp out the joy that they had in Jesus, who had been crucified around 30 years before, but who continued living in their hearts, as he does in ours today. Paul wrote his letter under house arrest for preaching the gospel while awaiting trial by the Roman emperor at the time. That emperor was the feared Nero, who for fun had Christians torn apart by animals, crucified or burnt as human torches, lighting the pathways leading to his outlandish parties. What Paul knew inevitably lay ahead for him was a brutal death at the hands of a cruel ruler. Let me ask you a question to think quietly about for a moment. When you're in difficult times, when the four walls seem to be ever closing in on you, when you can't seem to even glimpse the light at the end of the tunnel, where do your thoughts go to? And what sort of things begin going around in your head, maybe on a loop system? I'm going to reveal our verses in Philippians 4 gradually this morning, beginning in fact with the opening word of verse 8, which is finally. I smiled when I read this word because it gave me such happy memories of family banter when I was in my 20s and 30s. Back in the day, I was a big one for sending postcards to family and friends. One of my 3 Welsh uncles, my beloved Uncle Johnny, always used to tease me about how illegible my writing on the postcard was as I sought to cram so much in, and how my writing began to get smaller and smaller and more tightly packed as I got closer to the bottom when my space would inevitably run out. My family and friends who know me well will attest that I've still got a lot to say. But people's finally can also be a really serious thing too. Last month when Patrick Reagan spoke here on the subject Brighter Days, he shared what nurse Bronnie Ware has identified from her extensive experience as being the final top 5 regrets of the dying. People's finally is usually important to them. It usually matters to them a great deal. If you were writing an important and necessary letter to people who matter to you, what would you write in as your finally? I also smiled as I read the next part of the opening to verse 8. Finally, brothers and sisters. Because suddenly I was 19 again, having celebrated my birthday in Bangkok a couple of days before, on my way out with Mum to volunteer at Jackie Pullinger's incredible work with heroin addicts from triad gangs in Kowloon's former walled city in Hong Kong. Amongst other roles, Mum and I were given a crash course in Cantonese, and then we were rotated in to answer the phones and in Cantonese put a call out over the camp's tannoy system to summon people to the phone in Hut 5. I was doing someone's washing when the speakers crackled into life, and the unmistakable voice of my mum boomed out in a way that I've never really forgotten, saying, Waymond Fong, Tay moi, umjo. And I realised with great delight that Cantonese could be spoken in a Bristolian accent. But after the initial giggling at the memory, it was something far more profound about Paul's finally brothers and sisters that took me back over 37 years now. Because those addicts who we ate with, cried with, worshipped with, laughed with, and in my case, arm wrestled with, were always referred to as brothers. I saw them as my brothers then, and I still do. I always will. Because in God's kingdom, and in the words of the Sister Sledge classic released in 1979, we are family. Here together we are church family. We matter to each other. We hold each other up. We cheer each other on. You don't have to agree with everything that someone does or says in order for them to matter to you. This opening to verse 4 shows me that Paul believed it too, 2,000 years ago. I love that, and I love that it still stands true today. Now let us read Philippians 4 verses 8 and 9 in their entirety. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Whatever you have learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, put it into practice, and the God of peace will be with you. Are there really any real benefits in thinking about lovely things, you might well ask? One of Patrick Regan's PowerPoint slides in his talk here last month was of 4 things that scientists from their research have said guarantee happiness. The top one was where people identify 3 things each day that they're grateful for. Back in July for my birthday, one of my friends gave me this wonderful gratitude journal. This is what is written in its introductory section. Gratitude is a transformational tool that has powerful effects on your mind, body and spirit. Studies have shown that a habit of gratitude can improve your health and happiness. It relieves stress, boosts immunity, increases optimism, promotes self-esteem, strengthens relationships and more. It actually rewires your brain. What I particularly like about this gratitude journal is that each date is separated into 3 sections so that you can fill it in over 3 years and see at a glance what you were doing on that day 1 and 2 years before. In the same way, I love it when a photo comes up on my phone with a note saying 3 years ago next to it, and the memories flood in. Midday on Tuesday, I was down in my happy place in the garden, surrounded by sheets of paper and highlighters, doing crucial ordering for today's talk, when suddenly to my left, my eye was caught by this. Something so lovely, so excellent, so praiseworthy, something that reminded me of Creator God, who not only gifted me and you a wonderful world of such intricate beauty to enjoy, but who, in the reminder of the Passion Flower with its symbols and nods to Jesus' crucifixion, gifted us something that stands for all time, long after our world has come to its end. The life, the death, and the resurrection of his one and only Son, given for each of us. Where do you see or experience lovely things? Where do you hear lovely things being said? I would encourage you to intentionally look to spend time in those places and scenarios and around those kind of people who bring you joy. Something that I'm a big believer in is our consciously carving out quality time with those people who bring out our best selves and bring our best self to the fore. Conversely, last week in his talk about finding rest from shame, and particularly in relation to the danger of comparison, Steve included some quotes from Brené Brown about the power of perfectionism. I really like this one from her book, The Gifts of Imperfection. Shame loves perfectionists. It's so easy to keep us quiet. In the same way that there are people who bring out our best self to the fore, there can also be people in our lives, some from a long time ago, who did quite the opposite. People who have stifled us, squashed us, sought to squeeze us into expectations' tight box. Back in the summer, I bought this book for a friend's teenage daughter who I'd been praying for, and on quickly flicking through it, liked it so much that I recently bought my own copy. The book explores the unhelpful soundtracks that we often have going around in our head 24/7, the voices that we listen to, sometimes from a long time ago. And the book's premise is to teach us how to do 3 very intentional things. 1, retire our broken soundtracks. 2, replace them with new ones. 3, repeat the new ones so often that they become as automatic as the old ones were. I found that and this helpful statement in the book tie in so closely with today's verses in Philippians. Your thoughts are the internal soundtracks you listen to, and they impact every part of your life. The longer you listen to a certain thought, the more it becomes part of your personal playlist. Back in the summer, one of the mums from After School Hangout told me very excitedly how she'd thrown a silent disco in a local pub's outside space for her female friends just because. How she'd loved putting together the varied different playlists for the 3 channels on the disco headsets. And she said to me that she could tell which of the 3 channels each friend was dancing to by the way they moved. The playlists that we listen to in our heads affect the way we live. Your new playlist recommends that we intentionally ask 3 questions when we're beset by ongoing thoughts that seem to have become our permanent soundtrack. Is it true? Is it helpful? Is it kind? Another point that resonated with me so much is where it says that if the negative voice that we often hear on surround sound sounded like an enemy, we'd recognise it as such and stop listening very quickly. The problem is that the unhelpful, often broken soundtracks that we listen to are in an oh so familiar voice that we know so well. They are delivered in our own voice. I think that's so true. We can often be so hard on ourselves and we just don't recognise it. Here is a photo of the incredibly helpful poster on the back of a staff toilet in the school where we invigilate that poses this question as its header. Is your inner voice a friend or a bully? Followed by this powerful statement: how we talk to ourselves matters. We can say to ourselves, it's all your fault, you're a failure, nobody loves you. Or it suggests that we can instead say, you are doing your best, you are kind, you are loved, you can try again. And next to the Education Support 24/7 confidential helpline, it says this: we can't control what others say or do, but we can learn to speak kindly to ourselves. I love this image and message from Charlie Mackessy's book. Most of the old moles I know wish they had listened less to their fears and more to their dreams. Let's be careful about the soundtracks to our life that we listen to. A couple of years ago, during a brilliant cafe-style Sunday morning service here exploring mental health in small discussion groups, we were given this resilience river sheet to talk about, which posed, among other questions, this one: what are the things that drain you, that lower your levels of resilience, that make you more likely to feel you've grounded on rocks? At this time, might it be helpful for you to ask God to dredge your mind of negative messages, thoughts and playlists that have clogged it for maybe a while now? When Derek introduced this series 2 weeks ago and spoke about how Jesus in Matthew 11 urges us to take his yoke upon us, I think that we need to make sure that we have taken other people's yoke, or even the yoke that we have burdened ourselves with, off from across our shoulders in order to make room for the easy one that Jesus has got ready and waiting for us. For my next part, I want to think about what peace of mind isn't. It must have been about 15 years ago when I was so taken aback when someone who was a wife, a mum and a professional team leader in her field said to a group that I was part of that she would love it if she could just stop the world and step away for a bit. Just go off quietly by herself with no responsibilities and take a breather. I was younger then and wasn't so aware of some of the pressures that hit in middle age, in what is often termed the sandwich generation, which refers to middle-aged adults, often women, who were sandwiched between caring for their ageing parents and raising their own children, all alongside juggling their other responsibilities in life. I've thought about that woman so often over the years. What happened was that she kept on keeping on, and it all turned out all right in the end. But sometimes I see that when people want a bit of a breather, a bit of respite, at any cost, what they actually end up getting is something very, very different from peace of mind. I think that what escapism gives us is very much a temporary reprieve from the pressures of life, and it more often than not comes with consequences. In her September talk on the Holy Spirit, breath and water, Helen Wong told us how her feelings that as a busy person with responsibilities, she has earned her social media doom scrolling time in a way that can leave her caught up in the addictive, pervasive nature of screen time that she said is such a common phenomenon that it has been given its own name, revenge procrastination. I think that so much of escapism is born out of a wish to have a bit of a breather, to step away from our busy worlds for a moment, or maybe put our head in the sand for a brief minute of respite. And I think there are such subtle, imperceptible ways in which we can be lured off of our known safe paths. A flash of something off through the trees that we'd like to explore further. A glimpse of a vista that we've always wanted to experience, just around that obscure corner over there. The sound of something exciting in a different place that our sense of FOMO just won't let us ignore. And suddenly, we've taken more steps away than we'd ever intended. And we're lost a long way from home, and we don't know the way back, or how to retrace our steps back down sin's shortcut that we were so subtly lured into taking. And now the consequences of our foolishness are all too real. These things were brought into clear focus for me back in June when I was at a teenager's baptism at Community Church Greenway. At the end, one of the team came up to the front and said that sometimes she orders a meal in a restaurant and what arrives is really disappointing because it's so different from how the menu described it. She said that sins like that, the way that it describes itself in the menu sounds so delicious. I think that's so true. Sin talks a very good talk. It dresses itself up, oh so damn fine. It doesn't ever come to us wearing rags. In the past, when hunters dug pitfall traps for animals to fall into, they camouflaged them with branches and leaves in order to disguise the danger until it was too late and the animal was in it. Sins, traps and snares are equally as hard to spot. They're designed to catch us out. What I want to say to you this morning is don't think that you can outsmart sin. It knows every trick going. Believe you me, it's after your peace of mind and it will go to extraordinary lengths to get it. Think very carefully before deciding to take its enticing shortcut. For lions crouch and prowl all along its edges, waiting to devour those tricked into venturing down its paths. Two of the most obvious ways that it takes our peace of mind, I think, is by loading us with the difficult emotions of regret and shame. Back in her September talk, this is what Helen Wong said so succinctly about shame. Shame is something that no human is exempt from feeling, and shame is particularly challenging because it not only is quite easy to conceal from others, it is actually really easy to conceal from ourselves. Shame can be hidden for long periods of time. It can be tucked away, unconsidered, avoided. Then she highlighted something so healing about God's grace when she said, His light is so illuminating that there are no dark corners with him. The parts that we really want to hide and cover up are the exact parts that he wants to bring to his light. I love that God is all about restoration, about picking us back up after our mistakes and the ways in which we seek a little bit of respite from our lives at any cost to our well-being. Whilst regret and shame are the baggage that our mistakes often load us up with and place as a yoke across our shoulders, there is something so crucial and vital to our mental health that mistakes and other difficulties conversely strip from us. And it is that I will finish with this morning. It was a few months ago now when we were sat probably just about there, when the roving microphone was passed around near the start of the service. And it ended up in the hand of a man who, to be honest, I'd never noticed before, and who I certainly hadn't spoken to. That man was Donny, and I'll never forget what he went on to say. He told us how, on receiving a really difficult medical diagnosis, he remembered a word in lights on a building just up the road from his house. And he told us how, at that time of hard-to-take news, he decided to walk through our doors and join our family. He could so easily have put his head in the sand or got caught up in escapism, but no. What he chose was to press in so tightly to the hope that we here at Ebby unapologetically proclaim from our front wall out into our loved neighbourhood. On these autumn evenings when the sun disappears so quickly, I don't drive past our Ebby building at night without thinking of our brother Donny, a brave man, a courageous man who, when his world shook, chose to join us and intentionally think about those things that are lovely, those things that are right, those things that are true, when he so needed rest for his mind. We must never underestimate the power of hope, and we must let nothing take it from us. A couple of weeks after being so inspired by Donny, I decided to make a women's discussion evening that I was leading in a house in Pilning about hope. Towards the end, I gave each discussion pair this painting of a woman, stranded and blindfolded on top of the world. It was only after a couple of minutes of talking that I pointed out some details in George Frederick Watt's oil painting, painted in 1886, not long after his young granddaughter had died. Things look so desolate for this woman who cannot see her future. But if you look closely, her lyre has one string remaining, and what she's doing is bending in so close to hear the music that her one string makes. And the title that Watts gave to this painting is quite simply Hope. If you're someone here who doesn't feel as if you're part of any orchestra, maybe you feel stranded, alone, unable to see what lies ahead. What I want to say to you personally today is, like Donny so bravely did, choose hope. Always lean in and listen to the music and beauty of maybe your last remaining string, and play it. Play it with everything you've got. I will finish almost where I started by sharing the final words that the fox says to the boy in the Charlie Mackesy cartoon that Patrick Regan played at the end of his recent talk. You know, sometimes your mind plays tricks on you. It can tell you that you're no good, that it's all hopeless. But I've discovered this. You are loved and important, and you bring things to this world that no one else can. And finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is right, whatever is lovely, think about such things, and the peace of God will go with you.